Can I? Why does it tell me that? Good evening, everyone. Start the night out as normal. Sharpen a couple tools. This is the last thing that we're sharpening. Remove a whole bunch of the heel on that one. Just helps it along a little bit. It has a weird dull spot in the middle of it. Who knows? Nice and clean. What we want. Back over the head. This one's going to be a bit of a pain, some ways, a lot of ways. This is one that got filled with some epoxy. Had a nasty knot that went through the side. And when I decided I would use the Fordham and get rid of the nasty knot in the side, it turned out to be a whole lot bigger than what I anticipated. I think the first thing I'm going to do is actually give myself a different tenon. This thing has a bulge of epoxy on the other side, which you'll see here in a second. Trim this. That's right on that size. So that will have to drop down a size. Means we'll redo a foot right off the bat, which is okay. So just remark a tenon. It's not running very true at all. Just an idea. I'm not worried about a perfect tenon. I just want something to be able to grab a hold of. I need to flip this around and actually take some epoxy off the other side. Because there's a big chunk of epoxy. That should be more than adequate. And not quite as much of a dovetail as I would like. A little bit more of a velvet, just to ensure. And that will work. Huge glob of epoxy. I just use that. I use a tuck tape, which does a very, very good job. But when the epoxy heated up in there, it allowed it to. Just use the other tuck period. Allowed it to sink, I guess you'd say, because it was filled in this fashion from that side. So it allowed it to sag on the inside, and this little jam piece is sitting on that, so it's going to allow it to rock back and forth, which would give us probably some unevenness and probably a whole lot of different things that could happen with it. So we'll just take a minute or two out. Need the bigger one when we get back to that. So I need to get rid of the big glob of epoxy in there. Not normally. Normally would do everything from the other side first, but in this case, you go there, you can see the big glob of epoxy. So we're going to get rid of that. And we'll probably true up this rim while we're there. I'll have to try and be gentle on the epoxy. This thing is very out of balance, so we're not going to get any kind of speed out of it at all. It'll be easy to find the epoxy. Yeah, there's some of the tape. Maybe it wasn't as big of a glob as what it looked. Yeah, it is. I didn't get up behind it yet. That's the problem. I could probably live with it right there, but a little bit more. Why not? How are you tonight? Wonders of dealing with things that are filled. It's filled with an epoxy. So I got to get rid of some of that because my little jam piece wasn't sitting in there solidly. No wonders of epoxy, and see it's not being very nice to it, so it wants to chip. But I think that we can just look and see. I redid the tenon on it already so that I could grab a hold of that side reasonably well. So now this should sit, and now it sits on there nice and solid. When I had it on there without removing that, it wanted to rock a bit. So that creates a whole different scenario of things that are not working correctly. Mainly, it's going to introduce some unwanted vibration. I should have been smart enough to true up that rim while I was over there. Can't think of everything at one time, because this Mm, I say, could I leave it wonky? I don't think I can. No. Might have to think about that a second. I don't think I can. I don't see any way doing that. So now we can go back to the outside. It's got this thing really has warped quite nicely. 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch. And it seemed to actually warp more in one direction than the other, which is kind of weird. Question would be, I got enough material. I was going to say I could play around and probably move. I had an original center point in there. I could take the point out and move it around like I would a natural edge piece. Might help that. Just have to remember this giant sized glob of epoxy in there. Epoxy does not always, mostly doesn't do very nicely. So a little itty bitty cut. Usually if I do any kind of hybrid kind of pieces, it's usually with the Alumilite, the clear slow, which is a urethane resin, which turns very nicely. I don't always make out so well with the epoxies. This isn't epoxy. So we are close to being round. So far so good. It's chipping a little bit up there. This is what this stuff is known for, is the chip along kind of stuff, at least for me. So that should be beyond that epoxy there. It is walnut, so I can tell already we probably won't be going very long before we turn the dust collector on. Walnut and me are not friends. We're not round yet. It does have some pretty color to it. Choking. Hang on. Change some blast gates around. Because as I talked a couple different times on Wednesday nights in different places, every bit of wood has a certain amount of toxicity, I guess you would say. And some of it is individuals. For me, walnut is not my friend. That's why you don't see me doing much in walnut. We'll work some more up here at the top. Right about there, I think, is where it drops off into no man's land, so do most of that the other way. I think that got it round. It's really ultimately that's all I wanted to do. Is tiny bit of resin right there that didn't get touched. I'm not worried about that. Right there's where it's breaking through, so that's going to be the top of our bowl. So I think from there, we're going to bring it back around, or come back over this side and take some of this away to get us down to where we're going to be. Just drag it around that corner a little bit to get rid of this little razor blade. Looks like there's still one little dip. Not quite enough yet. Just a little bit more. Well, most of that was sort of a shear scraping kind of a cut. Handles low, using the bottom wing. I think that's good enough. We'll get the rest on the inside. I guess now the next question is, will it let me? It's been a while since I've done anything with epoxy. And try and see what it'll do scraping wise. See whether it tears out big chunks. Hopefully not. We also now, we also have an imbalance, so we can bring our speed up to a more comfortable speed, at least for me. See a nice shavings coming off of it, but that doesn't mean much. So it doesn't feel like it's very sharp. It's going to leave lines on there, lifting the grain up a bit there. Be lazy and not walk back over to the grinder. Just give it a little touch up with a CBN stone, which will give it a much finer burr on it to start with. This time I'll drop it down, because I'll use it as spear scraping. I'll be on its side, which will give us a better surface anyhow. It's just a little bit more difficult to actually make a little bit more of a shape with it like that. It's a very gentle touch. But you get very, very fine angel hair shavings off of it, which generally means that you've gotten things cut very cleanly. Not totally. In there I don't. do have the pointy one, the weapon, the real weapon. I've yet to have a catch with this one, but it would be exciting to say the least. But it will allow you to get in very tight places. That's the same thing. I was thinking maybe I'd actually have enough room to give it a little bit more of a detailed foot. That doesn't help the point when you stick it into the heat duct above my head. I think we can get away with this. Should be able to. Pop it off. Don't trust the fingers. Trust the measuring device. See how much we actually have down there. Got a solid 3/4 of an inch. So maybe I can do something. I've sort of gotten away from having just sort of a flat foot on them. I don't think they look as nice. It's just kind of my opinion. So if I put a bead down here, so you could go to there, might make more sense. So if I come out into here somewhere and put a bead, give it a little beaded foot or something. So about 7, so a third of 7 be 2 3/8 maybe. So it's not going to be much bigger than that. Dilemmas. Maybe instead of a bead, maybe I'll just give it a little bit of a cove in there. The once in a blue moon 3/8 ball gouge will do that job nicely. So out in here. Blend that away a little bit. Just lift it up off the table, 1/8 of an inch, something like that. And then all that will go away. I think I like that. Oh, I messed up this whole area in here, but we can fix it. Quick and easy like. I like to eliminate as much sand, as much difficult sanding. Still gonna have a hole in it. Oh well. I'm not gonna mess with that one. I don't think it's gonna come through to the other side. I don't have that very good in there though. Definitely not getting the radius I want in there for some reason. Back to the bigger 1/2 inch gouge. That looks a little bit of a smoother transition. Yeah, that'll work. I can live with that. So, quicksand. And how are you this fine evening? Apologize for the extra noise that you may be hearing. That's my dust collector running. Just by virtue of this is a piece of walnut. And walnut is not my friend. But we're doing some flat woodworking kind of projects, so things were unplugged. Disorganized. 323, 2400. There we go. For me, it's in reverse. As you can very easily see where all the dust is going. Goes directly into the chute where I want it to. Get rid of any and all tool marks. That should do it. Now we should be able to just cruise through the grit. I had an interesting one the other day. I had getting some stuff ready. I have classes at the end of next week. And I had went and got some of the materials, spindle blank type materials. And I like to cut them on the bandsaw, get a little bit more yield out of it. The bandsaw is a little bit more forgiving because this is 8/4 material. And as soon as the blade touched the piece of wood, the bandsaw stopped and didn't even cut. I'm like, well, that's exciting. So I gave it a minute. I turned it off. And I'm like, did I just break the blade? And I'm like, touched the blade after a couple of minutes, and I'm like, well, that's not loose. Opened the bottom compartment to find out my drive belt. Decided it should shred itself. So needless to say, the bandsaw is going to be what you call out of commission for about a week. I was able to find a replacement for it. At least according to what I was able to read, it's the replacement for it. But I guess we'll find out at the end of the week or middle of the week, sometime next week. I'm not quite sure what even caused it. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just wore out or something. Kind of weird, but epoxy is almost impossible to get rid of scratches unless you go really, really fine on the sandpaper. And I'm not going to go really fine because this piece will get lacquered rather than the super glue finish I would normally use. Because super glue and epoxy do not cooperate. They're not friends. So we'll sand this a little bit up in here. This I got to do by hand. Where when I do it with the lacquer will fill all those scratches, sanding scratches from sanding it. First off, it'll get a coat of shellac, and then probably 3 or 4 coats of lacquer on top of it. Whatever it takes to get the desired finish, put it that way. I don't necessarily count the number of coats. Just as long as it's nice and smooth. You see, even a 400 grit scratches on that just leaves big scratches behind. We even cheat. We'll go to 600 on that and see whether it does any better. Probably not, but it may make them a little bit smaller. A little bit, but not much. It's not really even clear at this point. At that point, and this piece will actually, I think I have it clear enough. There'll be a, it's really hard to see. I'll take a, I normally try and make these, keep it light enough that they're sort of transparent, translucent. Yeah, that'll show you what it's going to look like. That's a little bit of shellac on there. So I think once the other side is smoothed out, thinned out, why that'll be fine. Might as well just go ahead and put the shellac on the whole thing while I'm on this side. Not that that's a grand idea, but it's just shellac, so it'll dry in a matter of a couple seconds. At least dry enough that it won't fling anything off. And give you an idea whether you got a piece that's going to be worthy of the effort, which it is, because it has some character to it. That's really the only reason that I went through the aggravation of the epoxy. A lot of times when I run into things like that as a rough turn, it may end up in the firewood bin rather than wasting the time and effort to fill it with epoxy and that kind of stuff. You give that a second to dry. You can also sort of force dry shellac. Use a paper towel and we'll burnish it. Maybe not. Stuck fast because of the epoxy. Of course. Should have known it would do that. It's dry enough. Don't worry with it. Shellac will get sanded back somewhat before I start to lacquer it. In this case, it'll get sanded back quite a bit right there because that paper towel is now going to stick in the shellac. But Is what it is. Now we don't need our tailstock anymore. And we can go to strictly to there. You can actually see it shining through the piece already, and that's still relatively thick right there. So hopefully we get a good result out of it. Just have to be rather gentle, not try and take any big cuts. Just a little old walnut bowl tonight, a little epoxy fill in it. Nothing exciting. Just cleaning up that rim. Make sure we're clean. A little bit of a knot hole or something there, and also chips on the way. Not a surprise. There's a bit of figure there where that knot was at, so it's not real much of a surprise. So I could do the Richard Raffin routine here, and there's the outside of the edge. Whoops. If only I could hold the pencil still, I'd be better. So we got a 1/4 inch on one side and basically nothing on the other side. I said earlier, this thing did not even distort evenly. Be gentle. Epoxy does not want to be cut very quickly, or it will chip like crazy. I'm gonna stop and look at that because it sounds like I'm being too aggressive with it. I guess not. Okay. Down below it is, you can see there's some chipping going on. Not very consistent either. The touch is not quite, feels consistent enough. It is dry, so check on our epoxy, see how we're doing. Other than some ripples going across it, it's not chipped up. We bring the light around the other side. It definitely is going to show light through it, which is always a plus. Kind of what I was hoping for. That's a nasty lump up there. Feels like we're a little thicker in the bottom than we need to be. I assume that's right. There's like one more cut in across there. No, that's why I wanted to do that. That's like the end of the epoxy is right in there. So it wants to bounce over that. And grab one that hasn't been used yet. That's the other thing with the epoxy. It sort of has a tendency to dull pulls fairly quickly. So it definitely has some abrasive properties to it. I can live with that. So a sanding we will go on the inside. Got a nice little bit of a curve in there. That little radius is, to me, is almost easier just to sand that off a little bit than it is to cut it off and get it right. There's a very sharp edge in there, so the sandpaper takes it off very quickly. Fill marks are gone. We had no torn green to start with, so it wasn't much of an issue. I was telling these guys earlier, I said the my bandsaw belt, the drive belt for the motor, decided it should disintegrate this week, along about probably Thursday or Friday. So we're kind of bandsawless for the week. And the wife's out of town at a painting convention, so it's like, wow, it's not a great week for that because I do have other stuff to do down here other than turn, but this probably be pretty much a week of working in the shop every day. So if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll probably a very good possibility that I may be on some other day this week. I don't know whether it'll be during the day or probably more so in the evening. I kind of have stacks of bowls and whatnot to get finished up or finished turned anyhow, sanded. Got to have some stuff to take to Wisconsin. I know, I know. I was out playing. I was out shooting this morning. Yeah, it was rather sticky and warm. Place you went to today, it's not a lot of. Some of it's in the shade, but yeah, wherever it was in the sun, boy, it was quite toasty. Of course, yesterday it was supposed to be a slim chance of rain, but we got rain yesterday morning here, late morning. I had to wait till late afternoon to got all my grasses mowed, which was a good thing as well. But it almost looks like a little bit of. There it is. Walnut is such a pain as far as I'm concerned. I have a fountain install. What are you using to seal the concrete? Is there I guess there's a concrete sealers out there that'll take care of that for you. You're as bad as me, Alan. That's the kind of stuff that you should be doing like in the spring when it's nice and cool out. Uh, Projects like that always end up being in the fall of the year or summertime when you get to it, where the boss gives you enough crap that you're not getting the things done that she wants done. I have a new mailbox post to fabricate and put in this week too. That's on the to-do list for the week. There you go, nice red coming through. Give it a different appearance. Really? You just brush that stuff on? Huh. Okay. I guess the other question would be, did it come out smooth? since this has the since it has the epoxy on, this is going to get lacquered. So my first coat of any of that type of finishing job is always the seal coat shellac. Then there's never an issue of, I use a water-based lacquer for me, so there's never an issue as to whether the lacquer is going to adhere to whatever you're doing. It also makes it very, very easy to sand because the shellac sands very easy and quickly. Does gum up sandpaper very quickly, but it does sand very easily. It makes life much simpler. So there's our piece. Okay. I assume you're trying to spread it on nice and thin. I don't necessarily have great success with doing some of that stuff in the epoxies. Other than people make it look very simple, but I've never really found it to be that case. I did learn a very invaluable lesson a couple of years ago with that kind of a situation. I used some epoxy. My workbench that I work on, work off of to do the woodworking projects and things of that nature, is a solid core door, and I got a new one. And I thought, well, watching all them videos of them guys doing all these countertops and all that, I'm like, that looks neat. And I had some. So I'm like, oh, I'll just do that. Put some tape around the edges of it so it doesn't run all over the place, at least right away. And put it on. And I'm like, oh, that works kind of neat. Right up until it didn't come out as smooth as what I would like it, for one. I really couldn't answer that why it didn't. Um, I think I put 2 coats of it on to get it smoother. And I'm like, well, it looked kind of nice. Almost looks like a really kind of finished looking kind of a workbench. Didn't necessarily need to be a finished kind of looking workbench. This is a piece of ash. It's got some figure in it. Had some bug holes that went the whole way through. So they did get filled with epoxy. But lo and behold, you learn from your mistakes, as they would say, which is always a good thing. But I learned that even though the epoxy workbench looked nice and smooth and nice and sort of shiny, it's kind of neat. Um, for a woodworking workbench, it's terrible. It was so smooth and so slippery that you put a router pad or something like that on it to do some, ooh, it's well out of balance. To do some of them work that I would want to do on my workbench. And it's so slippery that the router pads just slide all over the workbench. It didn't stick fast. So needless to say, the random orbit sander came out with 120 grit sandpaper on it. And I've actually sanded the entire top of my workbench, which is 3 feet wide and whatever the door is, height-wise, normal door. I think maybe we should make that just a shade bit deeper. So yeah, made it not nice. Actually, in some of the work I was just doing, I actually sanded more. I never even sanded the whole length of the table, and I really still haven't, but I did take some more of it off. Of course, in the downfall of that is now it's sanded with 120 grit sandpaper, which cuts right through the epoxy. It also left me like a, I guess you would say, 120 grit surface on the table left behind. So now instead of things wanting to slide all over the place, now when you go to slide a board or something across there, the damn thing doesn't want to slide very well because it's got a textured surface. Very well out of balance. A little bit of a pool cut down in that area just to get it closer to being round. That's not liking that either. I want this to go back and maybe not. Should have. Can I pick the woods tonight or what? This collector's got to come back on. Forget. Ash is very dusty. Dusty, dusty stuff. Really nice figure in it though. If we go, it won't show much. Or will it? Go there. Yeah, it might show a little bit better. Really some nice. This is a crotch piece, so there's some nice crotch figure right there. Thinking probably a little bit more off than what I needed to. We're gonna get under, hopefully get under some bug holes. So nice and slow and steady. Get a nice clean cut. We're getting up to where it's interrupted cut. And it's not spinning very fast, so it takes a wee bit more tool control when you get up there. And there's some bug holes. It's kind of what I figured. I didn't necessarily mix the epoxy to do this. I just had some mixed and it was left over. I'm like, and that was sitting there, and I'm like, oh, I'll just fill them in a bit. You see, that was pretty much a waste of time. A little bit of a, that was an epoxy fill there. A little bit of a streak coming down there. It was a crack. Bug holes. Bug hole that we're going to probably leave alone. Super glue will fill them in. It won't fill them in. It'll make them hard. So they won't fall out down the road. Yeah, gotta have some, gotta have some critters. Otherwise, I think that looks just fine and dandy for the outside. Quick little sando. Now our brain is thinking too much now because now we're looking at these bugs, bug holes, bug poop, I guess you'd say. The real question is how deep do they actually go? Quite deep. Upper Pittsburgh area. Yeah, I was in town Pittsburgh already once. I actually went to a symposium there many years ago. Actually, my truck driving career, I used to go out to New Stanton. Actually, the last I did any road work, that was my job. I went to New Stanton 4 days a week from my area out to there. It's a nice job, nice shorter day, unless they manage to get me when I come back to go do something else, which only ever happened like once or twice in a 6 month area, 6 month period that I was on it. Um, you lost me on that one, Al. Are you talking about something in Pittsburgh? Huh. Yeah, we did that. Now we don't know what we're going to do with them. I have a small brain thought on that one. A small brain thought says that you're watching Richard Raffin doing that. He is not a believer in using the super glue to fill things like this. He likes his 5 minute epoxy. Maybe I'll just stop sanding right there. Oh, missed some. Go to the other side. Oh, right. Okay. I follow you now. I'm a little slow some days, but I kind of thought that's what you were talking about. But you know how it is. If you assume something, you're generally wrong. And okay, do I have them all? I think I do. I don't think I'm going to sand any further than where I am on there. Sounds like almost a dumb idea to do what I'm thinking. I think I'm just going to flip it around and turn the inside because I know there's more of them on the inside. And then maybe I'll just come back and use some 5 minute epoxy and fill them all. Of course, that means I won't finish it today, but because even though it says 5 minutes, it takes a whole lot longer for that to set up and cure than 5 minutes. It has a bigger tenon on, so we'll have to switch chucks. That's a situation if I normally like to totally finish something before I switch it around, but it should be able to put it back just like we had it a minute ago. At least to come back and be able to just sand off that epoxy. See, there's a bunch more over here. Yeah, well, I don't feel that you even. It, you'll see in a little bit. I forget which brand I got this last time. It's not gonna be long enough. It seems like it sets up even quicker than the 5 minutes working time. We used the big long rest from Trent Bosch. Don't use it very often, but in this situation, it does work quite nicely. This is an offset tool rest. We'll probably end up going and sharpening very directly. See whether we're okay. Now my shop is not hot. My shop is actually climate controlled, as in it's in my house. So I don't necessarily have any heat or air conditioning ducts in my shop itself. Okay, it's way too thick. Same scenario, bug holes. That epoxy like that right there was about the consistency of like 5-minute epoxy when I put it in there. So it's kind of like peanut butter, something like that. So when it's that thick, it doesn't really have a chance to sort of wander its way downward into something. It's still thick. Lots of bug holes. I am going to try the other one. I used both of them on that other one, so I'm not thinking it's not quite as sharp as what it could be to do the work that I want it to do. No. So we're going to go sharpen them too. Still 1/2 inch thick, which might be okay on one like that. Uh, Leave the face shield here and go over there. Well worth the minute that it took to walk over there and do the work. And come back to there. And drop this down a bit. I actually like to talk to you when it's even remotely thin. And we'll lose that chatter as soon as we get past the interrupted surfaces. More holes to fill. It's going to be an exciting one to fill right on the edge, but thicken it up just a bit in there, more than what I want. I think we can get rid of that. We can take a little bit more down. Okay, if that's the way you want to play, then we'll just come back up here, rid of that last little bit. A little too heavy. And we'll see what it will look like. Probably also could or possibly even should switch over to a 5/8 gouge. Because even though I got the tool rest angled, I got a fair amount. There's a good solid 2 inches hanging over. Feels pretty consistent. Got a fair amount of ripples up there, but it'd be nice if you could spin it just a little bit faster. It's one of the things of doing things that are interrupted cut like that. It's the speed is your friend. Nasty, nasty hump there. Hmm. Can't have that big ass hump. Switch to the sharp gouge to get rid of that. I left a line up there too. Thickness wise, we're about the same as what we are here, at least by my fat little fingers tells me that. When they're dry, once it's dry, I don't necessarily measure them unless I'm concerned. I'll just go nice and slow. Trying to eliminate the force that I'm putting into the side of the bowl. I think that'll work. There's still plenty of ripples up here, but that's a day late and a dollar short to go after them. So tell you what, you have the big monstrous bottom bowl gouge, so it's a good place to use it. Hopefully that's not tearing that up the way it sounds like it could be. I saw that feathered figure was tearing it up on the edge of it, but not where I'm cutting. Figured I would stop and look. It did pick up some grain there. This stuff is going kind of like, it'd be probably very similar to cutting a burl, cutting on a burl. Like the grain's going sort of multiple directions. And the tool rest moved a bit, not that direction. Kind of the downfall of the Laguna lathe is that the grip on the tool post is not always what it should be. Just try and make one little light cut across there. It sounds better, and hopefully it looks better. Just that one little place. It's just going to be a little extra sanding in that one little area. I don't see, I don't see probably anything that we would do. Probably if I was to touch that with a scraper, it probably would could very well make it worse. I guess I could try. Um, I was doing some rough turn moles. I don't think that was this week. I think it was last week or one day. So I actually broke out the 5/8 gouges and was using them, which does make that a whole lot faster, as they will allow you to make a whole lot bigger of a cut. If you want to go up too far. Slightly pitch down. See if our gentle touch can be gentle tonight. Didn't make it any worse. Well, maybe we should do a little bit more, a little bit further out than what I was. wonderful. I hate when a plan actually works. It's scary. Okay. We're going to some long tool rest because we're done with that. I think we'll just give that a one. Do the same thing I did on the other side. I'm just going to give it a 120 sand because we got wormholes to bug out of there, get the poop out of them. Probably can sand that with a 3-inch disc as well, as long as I put the soft pad on it. I think that radius should work in there. I like to do the wings, some of the wings part without it running. Just helps to get rid of that's where the ripples are going to be. And if need be, you could actually sand the whole entire thing that same way. There's some there. Yeah. And we should be able to make it spin. Slow her down. Fingers back as far as I can on the tool. Run drill. That's pretty much where we need to go, I think. It's going to be another UFO project. It's not going to get finished in the same day. Never a good situation. And I should be done with the dust collector. A little bit back. Anybody have an opinion on what color these little mug holes should be? I have what's called a very big variety of colors. Take that off at the moment. I don't think, to me, black is not the color for these. I think if you're going to, if I'm going to fill something to sort of highlight it, I'm not a fan of black. As you saw with the other one, it was bright red. You probably don't have to be, you're going to dug out the whole way to the bottom either. Al, did you look at any of the maps or anything like that on going to Wisconsin as to how you would go? I would assume from where you're at, you're going to go up 70 to the turnpike. I looked at that the other. We were looking at some of that the other night. She's planning a trip to Florida for us in October. So while I was at it, I was looking to see how it wanted to take me from here to there. So I looked at that, and I didn't. In all reality, I didn't really like the way it took me. I mean, it's GPS, the GPS, Google Maps, whatever you may use, always wants to take you the absolute fastest way to some place. Well, unfortunately for me, where I live, the fastest way to go up there to Wisconsin like that was to go straight out the Pennsylvania Turnpike to the Ohio Turnpike and then up somewhere around Cleveland or something like that. But it would also be $79 one way for the tolls on the turnpikes. I'm like that. It seemed a little bit excessive. So I told it not to use the toll roads, and then it wants to take me across Route 80 to something or other. It actually literally took me to the same place where you would turn north to go up into Wisconsin. It's a little bit longer of a trip. I think it was only like either half an hour or an hour longer, something like that. I think that's probably, we really didn't discuss it anymore, but I think that's how we're going to go about it. Okay, so I got one's there, one's there, one's there. Have that one out. There we go. Enough. I don't want to do this twice. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've used Waze. A lot of the guys in the trucks were using Waze. I don't know. It was all right. I just recently bought a new truck and it already has the Google Maps in it, so that's most likely what we'll be using. Except when I go in a camper. When I'm dragging the camper behind me, then I will go in and look at things like that, and I may deviate from what they think you should go because, like I say, they're trying to get you there the fastest way. They're not necessarily looking at um, whether it's going to put you on some
some roads that you may not necessarily, like I may not necessarily want to be on, pulling a 26-foot trailer behind me. It may want to take me up over a mountain that I don't need to go up over or something like that. It won't matter going to Wisconsin because we're staying in a motel, so. Any thoughts on what color you think it should be? Blue, greens, say red, not yellow. Purple. Um, hot pink. Mm, yeah. Hot pink is what it's going to be. Pink. Now, if I remember correctly, the trip for us to go to Wisconsin, I think it said it was like 14 hours, something like that. 14 or 15 hours. Probably not a whole lot different for you, Al. Might be a little bit less. Gloves is our friend. This is the System 3 epoxy. Oh, now can we get the lid off? Yeah, there we go. I got it because it has a double plunger, which I thought was kind of a nice feature to it, so that it's mixing more of the amount that you want at one time. Will that be enough? Maybe. Yes. Well, see, where you're at, it's going to run you up 70 to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which would be Breezewood. For me, since I'm right off of the turnpike at 15, I would have the distance between here and Breezewood, which is evidently is another $30. So I think our thought process is going to be that we're not going to go the turnpike. I'll still be on the same, it'll still end up being the same roads once you get out into Ohio, wherever it is that it turns you north. Somehow. I always mix up too much epoxy. Never fails. I'd rather have too much than not enough, though. I never claimed not to be messy with this stuff either. Right. Oh shit. Maybe I should have left that 5 minute epoxy sit a little bit. It wants to run back out of my holes. Hmm. That's kind of surprising. Not in a good way, of course, but I would have thought it was going to be thick enough not to do that. I was quite wrong. Hmm. Maybe I should have waited for it to get more jelly-like. It won't take long though. I guarantee you that. That what's coming off of there now is more of the peanut butter kind of thickness, consistency. Even that up there is getting much and much thicker quickly. And by the looks of it, I might have to mix up more just for the other side. One thing with this 5 minute stuff, when it starts to set up, it sets up. I think it sets up very quickly. Gets stiff very quickly, which in this case is not necessarily a bad thing. More peanut butter, spreading peanut butter on there now. That little bit that stuck out there is actually set up. Okay. Like everything's about a learning experience, right? Get it off the bed ways. No, it's already set up on there, so let's scrape that off. Yeah, that's set up. That's actually set up enough that it won't even let me move that around in there. So I'll have to get a clean card and start over for the backside. Talk about creating some sanding. I had epoxy on my fingers and stuck it on the back of the bowl. Oh well. Like I tell my granddaughter all the time, she's Messy Marvin. I'll be a Messy Marvin tonight. I got it on my fingers. Okay. So probably a little bit left for that side. Probably should have mixed the other side too, the other one before I dumped the mica powder in, but we didn't. This time we will use the opposite end of the popsicle stick so that I'm not sticking epoxy into my mica powder. That was probably way too much mica powder. Okay, clean finger. Back to there, because we're going to fill these up here first. Those there will probably cooperate a little bit better than the ones did down below. They're kind of, those holes are kind of sloped down towards the bottom. Live and learn. We'll just give that a minute because epoxy heats up very quickly as it sets up. It starts to cure, and put it that way. At least the deeper other stuff does. But this obviously this is too because it wanted to run. So when it gets warm, it becomes more viscous, I guess you would say, more runny, so to speak. At least I think we have too much. I know some of the people I've talked to in the pen world that will use this stuff to glue their pen tubes in. And I'm like, well, that would take too much time as far as I would be concerned. But I'm like that kind of stuff is super glue all the way as far as I'm concerned. Come on, air bubbles. Here we go. So we'll go for the guts. We'll start filling some of them. Keep coming back air because it's going to run back out of them. It's also starting to gel up. Filling bug holes, unfortunately. Filling bug holes with some 5-minute epoxy, no less. Which is starting to did the other side first because there's lots of bug holes in this. Now that one probably should probably should just really mix it in smaller batches to get it so that it's the consistency of peanut butter like it is right now, which also means it's starting to set up. That one's already set up. That was the first one I did. The other side I was having trouble with it because there was more holes on the other side. It wanted to start actually running back out. So let's make sure that we got them all. There's a little hairline crack. Probably not a grand idea to do that though, because now it's really getting getting to the point where you can't do anything with it. So that's the extent of the mess that we're going to make tonight out of that. Epoxy is such messy stuff to work with, I think. I make a mess with it pretty much every time that I do it. So we'll see. This has actually turned to its final shape. And then I had the bright idea that I should fill them bug holes in rather than leave them alone. So probably tomorrow sometime, then I'll come back and sand all this epoxy stuff off. These been sanded uh, with 120 on both sides, inside and out. So inside has a whole bunch of bug holes. They sort of mm, they sort of coincide with the outside. They just didn't go the whole way through. Hopefully we got them full enough that when we sand them off that we don't end up with holes underneath there. Probably won't surprise me if we end up with holes underneath it. Get these gloves off before I stick my fingers to something. And what time we got? 7:45, so we'll probably just call it a day. Clean this epoxy off. The bed was just waxed the other day because I did some green wood turning, so it was clean and waxed. So the epoxy is not going to stick to it very well, or at all, for the most part. So I guess that's one good thing. So other than that, I think that's going to be a wrap for us tonight. Yeah, the surface of the epoxy, that was what I just put on. That's not even tacky to your fingers at all right now, which is always an interesting scenario. It was set quickly enough like that. definitely not. I don't know how. I don't think you could go after that stuff very quickly as far as the sand or do anything like that. I don't think it would be a grand idea to try. So we'll go overhead. Anybody just joined in? This is the first piece. This is kind of the epoxy kind of night. Um, this is the first one we did tonight. These were all rough turn. In this case, February of 24. Piece of walnut. It had a, I don't know, like a branch or something went through here. Well, it was all rotten. When I started um, carving on it with the carving burr, um, it just literally went straight through that it was that soft and punky. So this was another epoxy fill. This one is, if we can get the light in the right place without blinding somebody. This one is see-through. It is red in color inside of there. Actually looks like there's even a bunch of, look at it in the bright light, there's a bunch of little air bubbles that didn't come out, which is always disappointing with the epoxies. But so that's our two lonely pieces from the night, both of which have epoxy in them. This one, the walnut one, has a coat of shellac on it. Because if you've ever watched me before, I finished probably 90% of my work gets done with the super glue, the slow setting super glues, but super glue and epoxy are not friends. So if I was this one, the ash one, I maybe will or probably will do that one because it's going to be little dots. But this one with the big area of epoxy, epoxy is the super glue does not stick with epoxy, and it's vice versa. If you do something with super glue and put epoxy over it, it doesn't adhere to it. So always keep that in mind. You see people doing some really neat stuff with resins and embedding resins and things and like that. Why it's you got to be careful because it may not stick to it. So that's our two pieces that we did. And I think I have another piece of resin stuff. Somebody was asking about something like that. This is some old castings that I did. There's a pine cone in the middle of that, which would probably look neat as a little flower vase. So I've got a couple of minutes. I might true that up to see what it's going to look like. This we will go between centers. If they already has a center in that end. Probably go to this end. Something sharp. Oh, that's like you're running your fingers across the chalkboard. It's a nice sound. So there's our center for that end. A little dimple. Let's put a dimple in that end. Go bigger. So we use our steb center, live center to get us between centers. Doesn't look like it's very true. It's not. Not a surprise. I also have a big void in this. I don't know where this is a big. Pretty sure this is the Alumilite. We'll find out here in a second because you can tell the difference when you go to cut them. The epoxies don't cut as well as what the urethane resins do. At least that's my opinion.
And most people feel you have to use carbide on this, and you don't. I don't. I don't own carbides anyhow, but and use your standard gouges on it. You just have to be a little bit mindful on the size of cut you may take, maybe even to the point of what type of cut you may take with it. Bowl gouge, sort of using it as a shearing cut, almost like you would use a skew cut. Handles way down, just using the sort of the lower part of the wing. Use it in this way that these ribbons of shavings are going flying off onto the floor to my right, rather than going straight up in the air. They probably will eventually go straight up in the air, but this way they're not wrapping around everything. They stick to everything though, that I will tell you, which is the bigger pain in the ass of it. And see, now we're getting, when I was started out, it was all interrupted cut because it wasn't round. And you can see right off the bat now we're getting closer to being round, so it wants to stick fast. Down here, there's a piece of wood in here, so I want to get down to that. And I'll put a tendon on this so I can grab it in the chuck. At least I thought there was, oh, maybe it's not wood. No, there's wood there. You're not quite that far down though. This is one of these bright ideas from quite a long time ago. No, that's pure resin there. There is a block of wood in there though. Still not quite round. So, wouldn't be so fortunate, I don't think. I think we're definitely in between. Yeah, that's too big. The other one's not going to be. Go down a little bit further on that. I should be able to grab it with a chuck. I have to commend those people that just love to turn this stuff. Just such a mess. Sticks fast to everything. And if you try and go too fast, it chips and wraps around everything in its brother. Let's try another thing on that. That tenant's way too big for what it is. Let's see what it's going to do with the parting tool. Is probably going to send the chip straight up in the air. Yes, which means they wrap around and you have no visibility of what you're doing. Which makes it a pain, 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 pain. If we're getting remotely close. That's probably close enough. So now at least I can get rid of one end of it. Put it in the chuck and we get rid of one end. after we get some of the fuzzy hairs off of the plate, off of the road. Sticky, staticky stuff. So now we can sort of go to town a little bit. I think I'll probably still bring the live center up just to eliminate some of the that may want to chatter a bit out there. Shorten up the tool rest now. String stick fast to all my drawer fronts below me. Now the simplest tool that I've ever found to work with this stuff, if I can put my finger on it, simple negative rake scraper. With no burr, it's just going to be a small negative rake scraper. Could probably use the bigger one too. Maybe I should try the bigger one first. Try the bigger one first. It will throw the chip straight up in the air, but I can get away with that problem because I'll bring the dust collection hose right up to it and turn it on. And in my case, this is this dust collection hose you see me use all the time. There's a cyclone that's sitting right beside me over here, so it goes through that first. So this hairy stuff that flies every which way but loose doesn't end up in the dust collector. That would be a really big pain. It just ends up in the bottom of that metal container. Not quite getting it as well as what I would like it to. Hose up further. Messy, messy stuff. There's a lot to actually remove up in this area. Or at least a fairly good amount, I think. I'll probably try and make this into some sort of like a little weed pot type thing, or a little flower pot.
Very messy, as you can see. Probably got it sticking. That would be in my head, on my head, and everything else. Still not round down in that area. That little hole there is probably going to become an issue. Hardest part on something like this is I have no idea how far in I have to go before I actually get to the pine cone. I think there was a fair, looks by the looks of it, it looked like there was a fair amount of space around it. Because ideally I would like to get into the area where the pine cone would be sticking through a little bit. Oh, dropped that in the wrong place. Not really used to doing things of this kind of size. Usually it's something more like an ice cream scoop handle or something like that, where the hose can be actually close enough that it's literally sucks it straight away. Sticks fast to your everything. Hands. Let's see what the gouge will do with it tonight. Maybe I'll throw the chips somewhere else besides on me. Go too fast, it will chip, like it did there. The other thing is, when you're cutting with the gouge with this stuff, you can do a nice, neat job with it. As you see it wrapped up around here. Well, what you didn't see was that when you're cutting with the gouge and it's making that nice, lovely cut, and all this is headed down to the floor, which is a great thing, good place for it to go. But it's still one continuous strand, even though it's down on the floor. And when I went off the end right there, just before I went off the end, it broke off and wrapped around there. It sucked a bunch of that right up off the floor, which is not always the funnest thing for it to do. That's definitely getting somewhere a little quicker and a little easier. Keeping it out of my face anyhow, put it that way. Don't touch. If I go that way, it's going to wrap around the chuck, I think. Maybe not. Maybe it'll just go up against me. Yeah, yeah, it will. But you get the idea. If you don't own carbides, and everybody and their brother wants to tell you that you have to use carbides on it. Well, there's living proof that you do not need to use carbide tools on resin. Negative rake scrapers work very, very well. Never really tried any of the traditional scrapers on it. They, they might be a little too aggressive. We'll answer that question though. Now that I opened my big mouth, that's kind of a thought. I do have one that's just a smaller radius. Huh. I thought I had all these. I make these usually when you see me pull out a traditional scraper and it's silver. These are made from some Amazon steel. Maybe we're going to use this one. Maybe we're not. That's where I checked that thoroughly. Doesn't want to fit in the handle. So I guess we're not trying that one. So let's try our bigger, fatter one. So we're above, a little above center, up a little bit higher once. So traditional scraper. It should work the same. I wouldn't think it would be any more aggressive. Oh, yes, it could be. Could be more aggressive because there is a burr on it. Yeah. So this is the one that needs sharpened anyhow. So what happens if we wipe the burr off, which is what you would need to cut wood. You need that burr to be there, but with this stuff, nope, still wants to grab a hold of that. So traditional scraper would be a no, because that's the end result of something. Whenever it digs in on the resin, it chips it and shatters it. As I'm also fairly right there. I'm also fairly good amount above center. Maybe I'm not. I'm a little bit above center. I am sort of, rather than using it flat, I am sort of angling it down a little bit. Also feels like it's getting dull. So a little simple card scraper. Just go across there a couple times. I'm only going to do the one side, so it theoretically could end up with a tiny little burr up there, but it would just make a sharp edge. A skew on its side will work very well for this stuff too. So now, for whatever reason, now we're sort of getting more chips rather than stream of plastic. That's kind of nice. It's not giving you the world's greatest finish. There's a little bit of um, pine cone sticking through there. It's kind of what I was looking for. I really like it to stick through the whole way along. can sort of make one nice continuous cut like that though, without too much trouble. Big hole still there. Getting more pine cone showing through there. This is going to be the problem. I'm going to venture a guess and say this pine cone is not exactly centered in there. I just did this a very long time ago. I wasn't thrilled with the result, so it just sort of sat around to do nothing. Unfortunately, that end I know needs to go back further because there's no pine cone up in there. Literally using the radius of the gouge to make that curve in there. So that's basically the same curve as what's on the nose of the tool, which is kind of an easy way to do it on something like this. It wouldn't work very overly well on a piece of wood. The reason I backed up the tool rest, it's got this long bevel on the bottom, so I need it to be sitting flat on the tool, not rolling around. So it sounds like there's more. Yep, I was gonna say I thought you can hear it change. I can hear it change sounds a little bit, so that's more pine cone showing through. This really needs from here curved down into there to make its final kind of a shape. I'm gonna keep reducing the diameter and see if I can't get the pine cones to show through. There's little bits of it that sticks up into that area, so I'll still reduce a little bit up there, I think. Still a giant size hole that we don't necessarily know what to do with. More and more showing, but it's only going to show on one side. A little too aggressive down in here. It wants to give me a little bit of chatter.
So, yeah, over to our spindle gouge and see if I can't trim some of this back without making a total mess. I say there's wood in there. Well, that's it. Keep sucking it up in there. Um, little plastic brush will help you out in there rather than trying to stop every single time. Come on, break. There we go. Very much turning blind in that area. You can't go on that mostly by feel. That little bit there is actually wood. Impregnated with epoxy though, or whatever resin I used on that, which I'm not totally sure of. Okay. So that would be our base. Always irritating when something is whacking you in the hand as it goes around. A little bit better shape. One thing where the pine cone is sticking out like that, it's giving you almost like wood chips instead of a steady stream, which that's kind of nice. More and more of them. So if that's the case, it's going to be uninterrupted cut. So will my spindle gouge make an easy enough cut? No, of course not. Smashed it up against the tool rest.
But for me, I'm able to get a better shape by using what I normally would use. Except I still have that big ass hole in there. I have to try and figure out what to fill that with. Trying to reduce that diameter a little bit there. Probably worthless. Give that a little chamfer. This will be sort of just like the weed pots where I just drill a small hole in it. And there's the start of it anyhow. It is clear enough up here, I think once it was sanded, I think that could actually be brought down a little bit more. I can see some of the last little bits of petal of the um, pine cone in there. You know, I think that's enough of this kind of mess for one day. I don't need to clean the whole house because this stuff is sticks fast to my feet. I mean, there's the pile that's on the floor, so it's messy stuff. Messy, messy, messy. I don't know. I think we're gonna call that a wrap for tonight. This would be something I might work on another late afternoon kind of a thing or something or other. I may just keep on can take down smaller and smaller to get to that, get rid of that hole, and then that will mean a bit of reshaping on it. But it might look kind of interesting. I don't know. I think there's one simple way of seeing whether something like that is going to look of interest. Put a little bit of liquid on it, which in this case is a little bit of shellac. So yeah, I think that when that would be polished up, it would probably look kind of interesting. Once I get the final shape and sand it smooth, I think this will be a case of putting a coat of super glue over this, just so that I can seal up all those um, pine cone bits, and that'll make them stay the color of that, I think. Other than that, that's going to be it. Now we want a half an hour over instead. But, oh well. Questions, comments? We're going to call it a day. We'll get a little snack, and we'll call it good. Like I said before, this is a Sunday night thing, 6 o'clock. Stop by and check it out. Otherwise, we will see you next Sunday night, if not before. I'll have a good week.